Mahalo and talofa everyone. Want to welcome you guys to this live digital kava session that we have on this evening. Um, Everything is going well on this side. Tua, it's still cold here in New Zealand, and just kind of going with what the weather has in store for us at this time. But I can't complain, because life is still good, and yeah, for today, not too rainy, but just a little chilly. But at least there's no snow, so I can be grateful for that.
Mm.
But everything is good here from Mr. Aotearoa. How about you, Tua?
Yeah, I'm starting to realize here on the podcast, not only getting more grays on the beard, but the beard's pretty long. I have a love-hate relationship with having a beard and also shaving. I don't like shaving, but I also don't like having a beard. So this is pretty long because moving from San Antonio here, and the clippers for cutting
Mm.
hair and trimming down the beard still packed somewhere. I haven't found it, so it's been a good little run with the beard here, but definitely feeling old looking at all the grays. Must
No, I'm just thinking you got the beard going on. I did a little trimming of my beard, but it's just my hair is going a little bit long, so I need to figure out when I'm gonna start cutting my hairs. But your hair is still short, but looks like your kava is still giving a grow over there. But yeah, just welcome all the viewers and everyone that's joining us on this digital live kava session. Polynesian Prince, Malo, little late night show. Yes, it's a little late, but we just go with when we're available, and this was the time that we're available tonight, and we decided to do a show. But it's good to have you join us, Polly Prince. But
Malo.
but yeah, yeah, Malo, Polly Prince. But everything is going well, Tua. But yeah, what we have for discussion? What topics do we have for discussion
Yeah,
tonight?
we're gonna get through some of these comments. It's active early, and then we'll kind of go through. Water Bears, as always, welcome. He says,
Hey,
"I
what
hate you have a love-hate relationship with California."
what's
Water
going on
Bears.
in California these days, right now that we don't know of? Water Bears, what's going on? Is the riots
It's
still going, or the protests? I would say.
yeah, still going, and California is going to have a rude awakening. It sounds like the federal government said they're not going to fund the repairs to the
Oh,
damages, so that's a bummer. UTOL says Malo Kautama, welcome,
Malo,
welcome.
Malo.
Mereka says Malo,
Hey,
welcome, Mereka.
Malo.
Um, run it up says send them back, LOL. Masi, we have a interesting comment right
Iyo.
off the bat. I mean, this is what's fun about the Kava sessions. Every time something pops up new, unexpected topic, but you want to read this out, Mr. Atearoa, and maybe we'll have some conversation on this.
All right, yeah, let's do it. This is from Chiefs. Don't ever lie again about the Ufi Samoa. Hey, caught your lying ass. Hey, I think we
Mm.
kind of preface this to it, right? The preface was um it was not the preference of the Hamoa of today eating the Ufi, so that was kind of the thing. Of course we didn't lie. If you listen to the whole episode, then you have a good understanding of the context that we're coming from. But that's just us. We're just a friendly
Yeah,
island folks.
guys.
Share
You
stories.
know, when you run into that little guy in the village who always says he beats up everybody and he's the greatest rugby player in the world, and you know that he said this and no one said anything back to him. That's how I feel about some of these arguments. I mean, it's Chiefs, please, we would love to have a real discussion. This Ufi comment, what's his name? Story of Bo.
Yeah, something like that.
Hey, Chiefs, are you Story of Bo? If you're Story of Bo, we invited you to join us on the Pad podcast. We will switch around the whole program tonight. If you are a Story of Bo, because supposedly Story of Bo came back with a rebuttal that was supposed to be a roundhouse kick to the neck and knock us out, but small kind, the roundhouse only ended at my 385-pound stomach. And so I just got like I feel hungry. But
Mm,
there's a couple things. If you think that that was a knockout punch, I apologize, man. I feel like, it was like a little scratch on my shoulder. It really wasn't very impressive. Number one, because the so-called rebuttal didn't even address the real question. We never said that Samoans never eat ufi. We know they eat ufi every once in a while. Mr. Atearoa said, hey, he ate ufi here and there. We are talking about the preference of ufi. And how do we know? Mr. Atearoa lived there for 2 years, Chiefs, right? I went to American Samoa. I went to Western Samoa. I went to multiple markets. I drove around all the islands, over a 2 week period. Never, not even once did I see a ufi in the markets or anything. So I think it's kind of funny. I mean,
yeah.
at least
Well,
address the question, you
yeah.
know?
Well, and that's another thing. And we kind of talk about the cultivation, the way it's cultivated in Samoa. It's in the vow. It's nothing that
Hmm.
you're you're worried about with the weeding, and you're worried about the amount of water, and then if there's too much sunlight, you know what, when you do with ufi, because it is sensitive with the sun, that you throw the coconut leaves on top, or to protect it from the sun. So it's not cultivated that like that. That's why it's called the in Tonga they usually say it's just the ufi vow, but they called it ufi
Hmm.
samoa, which is just grown with the weeds and stuff. So that's another reason, the other reason we kind of spoke on it, because like I said, it's the ufi vow that's just kind of
Yeah.
grown over.
And some of our viewers brought up some really good points. You know how important ufi is when you go to any type of kaveinga or lave if you want to call it in Samoan, in Haamoa. You take a ufi when it's an important thing.
Mm,
I've never seen a lave lave or any event online or in person where I see a Haamoa bring a large ufi or a large quantity of ufi. I
mm,
mean, it's just kind of interesting how these so-called rebuttals, because Mr. Bo was like, "Don't even get me started on all the delicacies. Hey, how about have your ufi at the market first? You can't tell me how many delicacies you make when you don't even have ufi." And then he mentioned, "Oh, we have two types of ufi. The ufi Samoa and the what? The ufi Niue or something like that.
New Guinea or something.
New
I've
Guinea,
never
New Guinea. Yeah,
New Guinea, and that's what I'm saying. It's only a few of the population, like maybe of his village, that's eating it, but I can guarantee you the most ufi people eat in Samoa is the ufi Samoa, which is the one I've been eating. It's like the ufi vow. When it's available, it's available. And even the markets, if you have it with the lu, they have that ufi kind of cooked up with some some new, loloi, and yeah, they'll have it together. But like I said, like what you mentioned, Tua, it's not like the common thing that people go with the Hamoas today. And I think did see a comment that somebody brought up that the hot more today is probably the different than the hot more back in the days, and I agree with that because we were a lot more one, and we were sharing, probably eating more of the same foods most of the
yeah.
time with the ufi. Yeah.
No, and 100%. And we covered this in
Hmm.
Tonga. There's at least 14 types, main types, and then there are variations and crosses between all of those 14 and many more. So you can't tell me that ufi was so important and you only have two, and Tonga has dozens upon dozens of variations. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe this is a good comparison. Like you mentioned, Mr. Atearoa, the Tongans, when you have a Aiki, you take care of their every needs. You need to protect them from the sun. You need to nourish them, and it's a long-term commitment. That's how I see the Tuitonga and the Tongan royalty. Maybe the Tuimanua and the Samoan chiefs, it's just Ufivao, right? They don't need attention. They just survive, and we can all look at the difference when you eat the ufi. When you eat the ufivao, you get a certain product,
Mm,
right? Let's use that as a metaphor for the differences between the political, the religious, and the overall social structure.
Mm,
And I'm not saying one is, you know, one is better than the other, but if you have a preference, I can tell you there's definitely a clear preference on how the Tongan structure is, and we've talked about this many times before.
mm,
Throughout Polynesia, it was um, distributed power, right? There was never unified, quote unquote, Ha'amoa for many generations, and those things. The
mm.
reality is, in Tonga is the only place that had unified power. I think we discussed this with multiple people on the Matai system versus the Tui Tonga system. Very, very different things. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
So,
and that was the unique thing. I think we discussed it with Xiaoxi Eliu, saying that everyone had a Matai system like Ha'amoa in the Polynesian kind of family tree kind of thing. The only different thing was Tonga, which was the only
yeah,
different one. Everyone would change with the who gets the title within the family.
different
That was like a
islands. Yeah.
different islands, right? That was a normal practice. But because of like sustaining power and centralizing that power, Tongatapu was different in how they function of carrying the titles, which is interesting, and it was kind of the way things were done back then, which was a unique system, and that's why Tongatapu it is different than all the other islands. But it was a big part was how they politically structured the titles of going around.
Mm. It's a lot of interesting commentary going here. Let's go back one more time to Chiefs. He says,
Yeah.
also, we taught Tongans how to build canoes. The Lemaki clan from Samoa, ooh, I love the muscles. Tonga don't know how to build canoes, so they came to us. Interesting. Any thoughts on that,
Uh,
Mr. Aotearoa?
well, the only renowned Polynesian person that's actually built the canoes of today is Tuyone Pulotu that I know, and he's from Ha'apai that lives in Hawaii at the moment. He built a lot of the current Hokudea, which is a famous Hawaii ship canoe that's gone around all over the Pacific today. And he's also came to Tonga and built some karias and stuff, some traditional boats there. And he's the one that I know. The Lemaki clan. I'm not too familiar, Chiefs, regarding that. But I mean, I don't know any Polynesian more renowned in traditional boat building than Tuyone Pulotu. We did share a video of him. It was funny when he was saying that how I think it was Afatua, asked him if he
Yeah,
had some
interviewing
Hawaiian,
him.
interviewing him about what he should do building the boats for the Hawaiian ship or something. And he said that he doesn't need them. He already knows. He already knows what he needs to do. So I don't know anyone to my knowledge right now who has the knowledge of building the traditional canoes that's more well known than Tuyone Pulotu, unless I'm missing somebody. But that's my thoughts there.
Mm. See, once again, Chiefs, you've tried to go for a haymaker, and you totally missed the point here. Assuming, let's say I concede, because the Lemaki, there's apparently in Fiji, right?
Mm,
In Fiji, there's like a Lemaki clan there that was
okay.
sent there to build the boats for the Tongan Kalias. There's also some, I think, in Ha'apai somewhere that
Mm,
were sent there. But let's step back for a little bit, Chiefs. A independent nation called Samoa never existed until colonization. Let's start with that. Okay, so you're starting from a premise of there was a independent Samoa prior to colonization. There was only a group of islands that were somewhat close together that were referred to as Ha'amoa, where the Moa clan resided,
mm,
right? This was not a national identity. It didn't exist. Let's start with that. So the whole premise of the Samoans taught you that there is no basis for that premise. It didn't exist. a nation of Samoa didn't exist until colonization. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, okay, just like tattoos, there were different groups of people throughout the islands who were good at certain things like tattoos. And guess what? Why did the Lemaki clan move to Sam? Because the Tuitonga and the Tongan royalty said, yeah, hey, you have a talent.
Mm,
We need you. We're going to take you and send you to Fiji because you are in service of the Tuitonga and
mm,
the Tongan royalty. So that you're going to provide that. I don't know how you come up with you guys taught that. You know, that doesn't make any sense to me on that position. At the end of the day, the Tuitonga was ruling. That was the center. That was the capital. It's just like, remember we looked at that study, Masi, about the stone axes,
correct. Correct.
right? We
Yeah.
all recognize the stone axes were very good from Samoa. That's what one of
Correct.
the production things that Samoa did very very well. But who was the ones that distributed it around Polynesia? It wasn't Ha'amoa. It was the Tongan Empire or the Polynesian Empire that provided that. And our explanation for that is the Inasi, right? That came
Mm,
every year. The Tuiha Takalawa and the Tuikamukupolo, when they were in charge, they would bring all of those. It's like a tax, and then they would redistribute it amongst those who came. So, good luck with that. I mean, to me, that's not a very convincing because all you have to do is step back, and really your position doesn't prove anything besides the fact that the Tuitonga sent them there.
yeah.
So, yeah. Then yeah, you guys, and here's another one, and we'll go back to some other comments outside of Chiefs. Lemaki clan are the master Aliyah builders. Your king had to come to us. We taught you how. No, that's not what it says. Why did you guys go to Fiji? We sent you. You were sent to Fiji because you were very good at building the ships, and in Fiji is where the
The
wood
resource.
was, the
Yes.
trees.
Yeah.
So once again, hey, free to believe what you wish to believe, but
Yes.
not a very convincing position for me. Now, here's an interesting one,
Yep.
and this is run it up. There's some pushback. Some of our viewers are saying, stop trying to connect the Mormon Church with the ancient history of Tonga.
Mm.
That's our position. We see some similarities, and
Ye-
we're throwing out those ideas. We would love to hear run it up why you
Yeah.
disagree with that, and I think also Renegade here also says now that's a discussion I agree personally. It has nothing to do with Tonga at all.
Yeah. No,
Very
that's fine.
interesting.
Well, to me, what specifically, friend it up can go specifically. What in the LDS faith are we doing it? Because we just share we just share what the ancient religion is. That
Hmm.
it's concept with the religion of Christianity. That's a whole. That's not an LDS thing. I mean, I think a lot of them are thinking that's the Mormon thing, but I mean, we're going by Hikureo, the ancient religion of being the voice, as always described in the Bible of what is described there as God. So it's the same kind of God, and that's what I'm trying to say is that's not a Mormon thing. That's a Christianity thing with how it's
Mm.
described as God being the voice, and and the definition of hikureo is like the tail end of the voice as like Jehovah. That's what I'm trying to say. So unless something specifically run it up, if you can make it make it known what specifically in the LDS doctrine you're saying that we're trying to connect it, but that's just me. I don't know if you had anything to share on that.
Yeah, similar. I mean, this is a digital conversation. This is where ideas come in and everybody can share their thoughts. That's why we
Yeah,
bring it up, right? We don't just highlight the
yeah,
comments that always agree with us because
yeah.
that's
No,
not
that's
realistic, right?
correct.
Your idea, like the Ufi idea and your Lemaki clan idea, you start to think
Mm,
those ideas are strong until you put it out there and then you realize, oh, your haymaker was a little scratch on the back. You need to
mm,
go back and come back with a better idea. because that one's pretty weak from our perspective. Renegade says, "Me and Running Up disagree, but you guys are free to share your theories. Nothing wrong. 100% Renegade.
100%.
We
100%.
agree, and we would love to hear why you guys disagree with it. That's fine. Um,
Maybe I'm thinking renegade. Maybe you can go ahead and maybe give your definition of who hikureo to you. What is that? Because
yeah,
I think we've already provided our position on hikureo. If you're thinking hikureo is a person or a different idea or an ancestor, that'd be good. Maybe we can start from there. But yeah.
yeah. Very interesting. Last comment on this topic before we go to the next one. Run It Up says, Book of Mormon and Haggis, and they try to make a connection. That's an observation. That's one idea. Whether it's right or wrong, we'll never know. But that's what's the alternative? What's an alternative idea?
Well, here's the thing. Haygoth is from Vaihi, and Vaihi is the Americas. If that's part of the groups that migrated to Polynesia, then that's it. That's what we think
Exactly.
it is. So if it's that group or another group from Vaihi, the Americas, then I don't know. That's our connection. A lot of the Polynesian culture that we have today is because it's from the people from Vaihi. And we can discuss on which part of people who that it could be Hagoff, it could be somebody else, but it's somebody. What we're trying to advocate for is it's from the Americas. That's just kind of my spill there.
Yeah, Hikuleo or Renegade says, I feel Hikuleo was a person made into a deity from our people. That's just me, though. I mean, is that a possibility? Yes. But
Mm.
we kind of feel that that's kind of what happened to Tangaloa, right?
Mm.
Tangaloa was an individual who became referred to as a god over time.
Yeah. Mm.
So, I mean, reality is, were we there when we came over? Hey, maybe. See,
Yeah.
Wada Bears is always on target. Haggis
Oh,
landed in Vaini.
oh, that's why Vaini o Fefeka water bears. Oh, to the max. Maria water bears. Shit.
Maria, what's it?
Thing,
Pakilaw,
yeah.
Pakilaw. The water ki vai go vai ni pakilaw. We learned that that's how you
Yeah.
know when the water is good. You take the leaves, throw it. Vaini has all of the good ideas
So,
apparently. A Vaini
so you,
poto.
so you're trying to say the people who drink from the Pakilao, the stream that's in Vaini, oy, kakay potope, eh? Eh? Maria. I like it. I like it.
Maria. Hey, love all the comments and going on the chat. But keep going. We'll kind of integrate it as we go along. And so we're going to start with our first topic. Masi, want to talk about this is Uncle Donald.
Ooh,
Uncle Donald put Tonga on the world stage here, and they were famous. We're
yeah.
we're we're banned, travel banned
Mm,
potentially on Tonga, Vanuatu,
mm,
and Tuvalu, but Polynesia apparently is risking U.S. Security. What are your thoughts?
yeah. My thoughts here too. I think this is kind of a ploy by Donald Trump to get some kind of reaction and get the Tonga government to make connection or make contact with the U.S. government. Maybe talking about certain areas to improve on, or just acknowledge them that because it's a political. A lot of these countries have strong ties to China, so it's kind of like a
Hmm.
political strategy, tua, from the superpower. So I think it's just part of the ploy that Trump is doing. So I was hoping that maybe Tulsi Gabbard would advocate a little bit for Tonga,
Hey,
but
our sister,
maybe
our
our
Samoan
sister,
sister.
yeah, but maybe Gabbard is saying, you know what, I'm only Ha'amo America, not Tonga can fend for itself. So hopefully
Mm,
the people who represent the government of Tonga get their act together a little bit and start just acknowledge that they've received information from the US, and maybe can start working from there, because I think it's more of acknowledging maybe some of the they can potentially be banned if they don't send an acknowledgement or a notice back to DC. That's just me, Tua.
yeah,
But I don't know if you have
yeah.
anything on
You
that.
know, I was thinking that maybe it's because Tonga needs to step up our security, right, on passports and documentation. But I'm so glad that Chiefs joined us. Maybe it's because our sister Tosi is a Tu'imanua supporter, and maybe she saw our program and saw she
Ita,
wasn't happy that we kicked the story of Bo in the face with the reality that Ufi is not a Samoan presence. And she said, I'm gonna show these guys, I'm gonna show these Polynesian Eyes podcasts, don't mess with my brothers and sisters from Ha'amoa.
for Manua, eh?
Yeah. Don't mess with the Manua Ufivao. And said, yeah, put Tonga on the ban list. No, I mean I kind of agree with what you're saying, Masi. I think there was a standard drawn up on security measures and possibly relationship with China. And it's not that Tonga, Vanuatu, and Tuvalu were singled out.
Mm,
The standard on security, maybe relationship with China, and said if you don't meet a certain threshold, you're going to be included in this travel ban. And in order for that to get addressed, Tonga, Vanuatu, and Tuvalu are going to have to step up, collaborate, and like you said, this could also be kind of like the tariffs. It's a tool
mm,
to bring people to the table,
correct,
right? Bring
correct.
people to the table. Let's have conversations, and put a fork in the road. Are you going to choose China or are you going to choose the U.S. And
Mm,
what are you going to do, right?
mm,
Um, and so that will be very interesting how that develops.
yeah,
But some people are making fun, and I was like, "Oh, Tonga!" I was like, "Dude, this is Mickey Mouse, man. This
yeah.
it is what it is." Tonga,
Hmm.
you either step up your game or you get banned. Nothing personal. Business is
Nothing.
business.
And here's the thing: it's nothing personal. It's business. Is business of political play in the world of politics. That's where this is, and it's much bigger than Tonga Vanuatu and Tuvalu. It's just more of a ploy on other countries that are the number two trying to be number one. Well, U.S.
Mm.
has been number one for many years, so yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna make a little sidestep. I know we were gonna get into the Fiji story, but we're gonna talk about a interesting thing here.
All right.
Um, and since we have no, we'll go here. Let me find the video here. Um, and this is the wrestling WWE kind of feedback from
Ooh.
our our brothers and our sisters, right?
Mm.
Of the African American heritage and some of their quote unquote frustrations and unhappiness with Polynesians, believe it or not.
Jeez
So
Louise.
yeah, So we're gonna watch this video. It's on TikTok, and then we're gonna react to it real quick. See here. Let's make sure the sound's working. I think we're good. Let me know if you don't hear the sound, Musty.
Okay.
Have been eating off black culture for years. While Samoan wrestlers have been eating off black culture for years, while actual black wrestlers get left behind. They talk black.
Hey, don't get it twisted now, Brian. They don't make them like me no more.
Walk black. Wrestle with that I'm from the streets energy. But here's the truth. None of them are black. Not Roman, not Jay, not Fatu, only The Rock. And he even leaned into it when it was convenient. When black wrestlers be themselves, when they bring that same energy, WWE calls it a gimmick. They get clowned, laughed at, and pushed to comedy. But when non-black wrestlers do it, it's cool, edgy, main event worthy.
See, I'm off the scale with it. All raw, uncut with it.
It's not new. It's just never called out. Black wrestlers can't even play the stereotypical black character without getting buried. But if you're Samoan, white, or anything else, act black all you want, WWE, they will put the title on you. They don't hate stereotypes. They just hate when the stereotype is actually black. Samoan wrestlers.
Very
very
interesting.
mm, very interesting.
Hello, Mr. Atero.
Um
Black
my
culture
thoughts
for
my
years.
thoughts here. Oh, I'm still hearing the thing.
Oh,
Oh,
let me see what's going on.
now I
Sorry,
don't.
let's
No, all
get
good.
okay.
Um I don't I think there's a certain way. I think just the it's not the black culture. I think it's just the Polynesians just do it better. I think we're just a lot more authentic, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking Polynesians just are a lot more authentic when they perform. Polynesians are always good at performing, even the performing in our traditional dances, or even performing in our churches and stuff. And I think with that whole attitude is it's not a well, here's the thing: it's when Polynesians migrate, they tend to be in the neighborhoods where a lot of blacks or even Hispanics are at.
Lower
So
income.
lower
They
income.
starting from the ground up in the American dream.
Yeah, and to me, that's not a the to me that's just not a Polynesian thing, just being black. If they just been if that's their environment that they've lived in, and they're also applying some of their Polynesian culture of what they've grown up in, which is a lot of the Polynesians are performers in their, like I mentioned, to their dances, singing, even acting now. I mean, for those who know, especially Ha'amoa and Tonga, we all have that comedians who were comedians in their own Polynesian villages and stuff that people would always kind of laugh at. They like to make people laugh and make some funny jokes. So the Polynesians always had that. It's not a black thing, and it can be perceived as that because a lot of these Polynesians have lived in a lot of black or Hispanic areas. So they've like Polynesians, and like how the Kingdom of Tonga had to survive colonizations. You pick what's gonna help you, that's gonna be useful to apply in the future. You take that and you use it for your benefit because, dude, that's how a sophisticated people and society do if they want to evolve and be and make the your culture survive in the future. That's just me, Dua. I don't know if you had anything else to add on, bud, or a different opinion on that. But that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things that come to mind. Here's a question, then, Masi, I want to ask you. How is it that street culture is black culture?
It's
How is that?
probably yes.
How
The
is that?
street.
Is it really just because it's from the streets? Does that mean it's automatically black?
No, they think it's theirs because for many years they're the ones that's been
A
the
dominant.
number
There was a
two. The
dominant
number
culture there.
They were the number twos after the majority demographic, right? Where the
Hmm.
Palangis, but now, right, you can say is the street culture is probably Hispanic now because there's a lot more Hispanics that's on the probably on the streets that's living the street. I don't know. It's no one's culture, the street life. What I would say,
No,
but
and that's what
they.
I'm getting to is
Mm,
let me ask this question. There are African streets, right?
mhm.
Why is it that culture in Africa is not the same as the street culture here in America?
Because it's not a mix with the American
It's not in
culture.
America. Exactly. So to me, I think it's kind of unfair for them to claim just because it's street culture that it's only African American. I agree with what you were kind of saying is they were the most dominant ethnic group on the streets for a very long time. But I've met, you know, Caucasians street,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I went and built stuff in West Virginia, and in
Mm,
Kentucky, some of the poorest areas
mm,
in the nation, the poorest counties in the nation. I've built power lines in those areas. They have
mm,
street culture, right? So I think I want to kind of challenge the premise that if it's street culture, somehow it's only the blacks have street culture. I don't think so, because
mm.
there are there are streets in Africa, but it's not the same culture over there as over here, right?
And you can
So
argue
there's
they're more in tune with their black culture or African heritage
in
and culture
Africa,
back there. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
yeah.
There's a-
So we start with that, and granted, they are a big part of that culture, but to say somehow they own it, I don't know if that's necessarily fair because it happened here in America, and there's a reason for it. There is that culture of democracy, capitalism, and then infusion of other
Mm,
cultures into it that made the street culture. So I want to challenge that a little bit. The next one is kind of going along with what you said. Polynesians are very good at adapting to their environment. And I'll use an example.
Mm,
Building rock walls in Hawaii, right?
mhm,
You go to Hawaii right now, I'd probably say 90 to 95% of the rock walls um, in Hawaii are built by Tongans,
mhm,
right? And yet you would think that you would go to Tonga and you would see rock walls everywhere in Tonga, right? That's not
yeah.
a skill that was developed in Tonga. That was a skill that when the Tongans moved into the US and especially in Hawaii into construction, they said, oh, this is an area that I think I can feed my family with and get
Mm,
involved, right? Just like concrete.
yeah.
Tongans are pretty dang good at concrete, right? And it's that ability to adapt. Now, that you could make the claim um, that you know we are driven by our ancestors who were always finding new islands, adapting to new environments, new weather and isolation. And whether it's a volcanic island like Ha'amoa, well, guess what? Maybe bananas and taro grows here a little bit better than ufi. You go to
Mm,
other places, you can grow ufi, and other areas grow different kinds of crops. But I think Polynesians are very good at entering into a new environment and saying, what can I take from here to help me move forward, help me to adapt, help me to be successful? And some of that is street culture, right? If you
yeah.
grow up in the street culture, Polynesians can adapt and add their own flavor to it, have their own little approach to it, and I think that's where Polynesians are kind of flourishing right now. Is you need someone to be athletic, yeah. You need someone to be an entertainer, yeah. You need someone who can be tough and hold their own, yeah. Like Polynesians check a lot
And
of
another
those
thing,
things.
Tua, and another thing, if you need who's gonna be the better looking person, the Polynesian over at Uri Uri. Hey, I mean, I'm
Yeah,
just being straight up. Most of the
yeah,
time, 8 out
yeah.
of 10, you're gonna get a Polynesian who's a better looking than a Uri Uri, a male or a female. You know what I mean?
So
Hey,
I
you
mean,
know.
yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, like, you just look at it. I think it's just, hey, you have to ask the question with our Uri Uri brothers and sisters. Are you gonna call it like what Polynesian privilege now? Is that what it's gonna be? Like first it was
Oh,
just Tapalangis,
yeah.
Tapalangi white privilege. Now then there was Asian privilege because they're kicking out the Asians from the Ivy League schools. Now pretty soon I'm gonna hear Polynesian. Well, according he only knows Samoan, so maybe it might be Samoan privilege. Um,
Mm.
but they don't realize that there's Polynesians in general. But I don't
No,
know.
and
I think it's kind of silly.
the probably the best person to kind of tackle this kind of topic, and I've kind of listened to him a little bit, was Mayweather. He said it's sad to hear when you have the Udi Udi people who think that their culture is always breaking the law and living the streets. That's not a good thing, because if you associate black culture with always doing that, then you feel like the ones who do it the right way and get picked on their merits feel they're almost like looked down upon, kind of thing. So,
Hmm.
Mayweather is always he's had some interesting takes on that regarding that whole black culture kind of thing, because he thinks the black culture now is always doing something illegal, which he's saying that his own people would that's not a good thing. And then he always said, like, even the whole being called African American, you're either American or you're not. It's either, because when the Europeans came from Europe, did they call them European Americans when they came to America? No.
You
Any
said
black that's in
Americans.
everyone is the American. So it's kind of like it's the same topic with this black culture with the street tour. It's kind of like if you're just in the street, it's just a street culture. It doesn't mean you're associating the street culture with the black culture kind of thing. It's
Yeah,
just if you're from the street, you're from the street.
100%. And that's the thing. And the other thing I want to add to it is, I think the reason why, you know, maybe the masses in America are embracing of, the Polynesian version or flavor of the street culture, is
Mm,
because it still comes back to some very commonly shared beliefs: family,
mm,
religious. Like like if you Polynesian's a big part, and I saw where they did a whole special on Roman Reigns and the Usos and all that stuff.
mm,
You know what they talked about? Family. They
mm,
talked about their faith and
mm,
those things. And those are things that, like you said, street culture doesn't have to be just breaking the law. That's
mm,
just, hey, we live in an environment where there's poverty, where there's
mm,
challenges. We recognize that. But that doesn't mean that that's the only thing that
mm,
defines us. No, we have family, we have faith, we have, duty and responsibility, um, at church, to family, and even back to extended family back on the islands. So yeah,
mm.
I think that's something that was very interesting. That
Very interesting.
with the success of a lot of these Samoan wrestlers, that now all of a sudden there's something new in the horizon called Polynesian privilege.
No, and the funny thing is, to a man, it just shows you that we're like a minority within a minority. We're not even 1% in the Polynesian census in
In
the
the
um,
US.
in the U.S. And for us to make a dent that other minorities are saying, oh, we're like they're starting to critique and try to bring us down a little bit. I do that's we're doing good things if other
That's
people are thinking
impressive. Yeah,
that's really impressive. Like we're talking about the Udi Udis being what 14-15% of the U.S. population of 300 million. I mean, and Polynesia not even cracking 1%.
percent.
Maybe even if you include the Hawaiians, do we even crack 1%?
No,
No,
no, because the
that's crazy.
Hawaiians are such a small percentage. Remember, there's
Yeah,
not a lot of Hawaiians.
so that's crazy that we're making a huge impact and our population in America is not even 1%. That's crazy,
Yeah,
and they already feel threatened of what we're doing, but they're thinking we're taking their opportunities away. But America just goes on merits, man. Don't care what skin color or what you are, it's just on merit. But hey, man, Polynesians just keep doing their thing, man. Just keep going.
yeah, yeah. Roman Reigns, The Rock, all these guys doing great.
Mm-hmm.
Jason Momoa.
Yeah.
You go to Jayo Petaya. You're going through Ian Tongi. You going, like,
Yeah.
the list
Yeah.
is just
Yeah.
like, it's like you're saying. It's actually impressive, and I
Tulsi
guess I
Gabbard
guess
in the political
Tulsi
field.
Gabbard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I can see why they would be frustrated, right? It's like, how did this group that just showed up, for all intents and purposes, showed up yesterday, and all of a sudden having a huge
Huge.
influence and
Uh,
huge impact on the culture. Um, so I think I don't think that's a fair representation to say, oh yeah, they're ripping off
mm,
street culture and street culture is black culture. I was like, well, I understand why you think that way, but I think street culture is just street culture, right?
yeah.
It's just, it's unique to America because you have streets in other countries and they don't have the same culture. So there's something different and unique about the American street culture that has that kind of impact. So yeah, kind of interesting
No,
to see
another thing
some of
to
that frustration.
yes, another thing I want to add on, like even just even recent now that there were issues of some of the street gangs of the ones who were from America with some of the high amount of illegals that were coming in and creating their own kind of gangs and street culture, and there was a little
Hmm.
feud. So that's what you're trying to say. The street from whatever country, it could be from Mexico, Venezuela. I think Venezuela is a big one. The
Tren de
Ecuadorian
Agua.
gangs, yes, they're going with how they grew up from their country. They're bringing it with the mass illegal migration that was going to the U.S. and they were setting up hubs and they were having clashes with some of the black, you could say black street gangs or whatever that was in America for a while. But I'm just saying, it's the street is the street. It's anybody. If you just grew up in the street, there's a certain culture and attitude that you get from that. So yeah.
100%. Next one. Next one is a request from a viewer
Mm,
to kind of talk about. Let me see if I can find where Speechify talk about an article about Polynesians or Tongans found in Fiji, which is kind of interesting.
like a
Um,
gravesite. Yeah.
yes. So what we're going to do is rather than read it because it is a relatively lengthy. It's only like a 5 minute thing, but or
Mm.
7 minutes. But rather than us reading it, we thought about Snoop Dogg for a little bit because you can choose voices. We almost went with Snoop from the street culture, but maybe we kind of felt that we didn't want people to say we're ripping off of the street culture and African American culture on the podcast by using Snoop Dogg
Mhm.
as the voiceover. But we'll kind of listen into it. Make sure, Masi, if you don't hear it, let me know. But
Okay.
we'll start this from the top. Let's see if we can get it started here.
The Slaughtered Tongan Warriors.
There we go.
Discovering Fiji, or published December 15th, 2024, or last updated March 17th, 2025, or by John Kamea. This week we relook at one of John Kamea's adventures. He traveled to discover the mysteries on Yakata Island. This article was published in the Fiji Times in March of 2021. At 8 a.m., while the sun's rays were still tolerable and kind, we began a slow ascension to Yakata Island's highest peak, Korolevu. Here, centuries before the arrival.
Let's see if we can pull up that Yakata Island
Yeah,
in
I have no idea
Fiji.
where that is. Yeah. I'm guessing, is it somewhere in the Lao group where maybe a lot of recent Tongan migration with Maafu? That's what I'm kind of thinking. Probably where there was a lot of interaction with our Fiji.
Yes. Can you see this map, Masi?
Yes.
So there's Yakata Island. Yeah, so it looks like it's in the Lao group, Eastern Fiji.
Okay. Okay.
So
All
yeah,
right.
it's in the next to the two bigger islands, but not
Mm,
on the outskirts here.
mm.
So okay, Yakata Island. So right here. So there, this is the island that they're visiting right here. So it looks like it's just so this is like the peak, the high part of the
Mm,
island, I guess.
mm.
They're
Okay.
hiking up here somewhere. Okay. All right. All right.
It's good to see that. Get a visualize of that.
Yes. Hey, come on.
Here, centuries before the arrival of the white man, tribes set up their first village fortress called Kakabale. Like other stone forts at the time, it looked formidable and menacing. Kaibu and Vatuvara drifted close by, while Naitauba looked like a pixelated picture on the horizon. Several generations later, marking one of Fiji's well-documented wars, one of Korolevu's caves became the permanent resting place of a huge stock of human bones. History contends the bones belonged to Tongan warriors who were drafted to join Enele Maafu's army during his ambitious military conquest in eastern Fiji. They were killed on the island. To bring you the story, the Sunday Times recently visited Yakata, better known as the island home of Sefanaya Sukanaivalu, Fiji's war hero and the only local recipient of the Victoria Cross.
Hmm.
Yakata is also synonymous with the name Laisa Vulakoro, Sukanaivalu's niece and Fiji's most famous female entertainer, whose voice has catapulted the local genre of music viewed to international heights. Backed by the sacred blessings of village elders, my small team.
Is that the new like Fijian girl that's like is she like famous now?
I have no idea who that person is. I have
Liza
no idea.
Vulacoro. You haven't heard of her? I haven't heard of her either.
Nope. I haven't heard of
But I
her.
did see like a Fijian girl like is doing like these new songs recently. Oh
Okay.
no,
Okay.
she's a much older sister right here.
Okay. Like so.
So she looks like she sang songs like maybe in the 90s and 80s.
Hmm. Okay.
Fijian singer known as Queen Avude. She comes from the island of Yakutat.
Okay.
Okay. So she's kind of like a local famous singer.
Hmm.
Okay. So
Okay.
Yakata has some superstars.
Idea.
Backed by the sacred blessings of village elders, my small team of 3, including Leba Vulakoro and Sairusi Vakalaloma, scaled through mountainside shrubs and thorn-infested mimosa bushes that were unkind to the skin. We were instructed to travel light, tipping the scale at 170 kilograms. That meant I had to hike with not too much water and not too much clothes. On the outskirts of the village, before towering palms start their endless lines into the jungle, we stopped for a photograph near the Tabuna malaria. Algae flushed, this stagnant pool greeted us like a pot of green witch's brew. Our ancestors used to bathe in the pool, but they never caught any skin infection. The pool was believed to possess curative qualities, noted Sairusi, the tour guide. Walking through a foreign bushland can both be exhilarating and intimidating. That's because nature has a peculiar way of making the outdoors seem unfamiliar, if not terrifying. What may catch you off guard are the rare sounds of the wilderness, including the high-pitched vocals of serenading birds, the hissing sound of bough rubbing against bough, and the ghostly whispers of ocean breeze. Yakata is an island within the province of Kakaudrove, somewhere between Tavuni and Vanuatu, estimated to have been settled well before the 1800s. The island is endowed with caves, as well as the world's largest arthropods called coconut crabs, or ugavule.
That's the
Among the
tupa.
first to arrive on
Hmm.
Yakata were its warrior clan, followed by a group believed to have migrated from Vuna on Tavuni, who now make up the Chiefly clan. The last to arrive were settlers from Kamea and Laukala, who today perform the role of herald to the Tui Yakata. If you stand on Yakata's coastline, Korolevu looks like a hump somewhere in the center of the island. At the foothill of this formation is the old settlement of Kakabale. Today, Korolevu's foothill boasts a number of caves. One of them, perhaps the most famous, is called Karasui. The cave is a custodian of bones belonging to dead Tongans, who were slaughtered by Yakata warriors around the time in history when the Battle of Wairiki was fought. To this day, remains of former village sites and stone forts can be spotted at various locations on the island. From Korolevu, it is understood people moved down to the sea. Places like Samuta, Samulakana, and Nasivatsiva mark their movements on the island. Straight after Tobuna malaria, the hill began a subtle rise. On both sides of the track, plantations made their presence felt with patches of bele, banana, and kumala plants. My team made an unplanned pause before Vunibao, a tall tree that is the official first pit stop for tourists who visit Korolevu to view its cave and bones. This is where my ancestors were settled when Christianity first arrived on the island, Sairusi said. From Vunibao, houses were reduced to miniature homes, arranged neatly around the rara or village green. According to stories passed down through generations, Karasui was first deposited with parts of a Tongan sailing canoe and skeletal remains around the mid-1800s. This was during the reign of Yakata's third chief, Ratu Ilaichia Balinamoto. After convincing many island chiefs in Lao to join in the fight against Tui Kakao, Ma'afu's warlord, Wanikolo landed on Yakata and requested their support for the Battle of Wairiki, Tavuni, said Echuate Vulakoro, a senior member of Yakata's warrior clan, Dakwikake. Wanikolo was Ma'afu's right-hand man who waged battle against Tui Kakao, whose name was Ratu Golea, while Mafu was in Tonga. However, our chief told Wanikolo, "I'm sorry my people and I cannot go to war against our own paramount chief," Mr. Vulakoro said. He told Wanikolo, "You go and wage war against Tui Kakao. If you survive, come back and we'll meet." History tells us the Tongans eventually lost that war. Many were clubbed to death, roasted in Lovo pits and eaten. Some were spared their lives and sent back home to warn their people. Others escaped northeast, hoping to find favor among the people of Yakata. However, still exhausted from the Wairiki skirmish, they were massacred as soon they landed. According to Matai Vulakoro, Echuate's younger brother and a former tour guide to the Korolevu cave, those who were slaughtered and eaten were Tongans and some natives who had defected from Tui Cacao. They were slaughtered, put in a canoe, and their kinsmen who survived were forced to carry them up the mountain to Korolevu, Matai explained. Many bones, including skulls, were placed in the cave, but only a handful remain today. Some have been removed by visitors to the cave, others scattered by giant ugavul. After Vunabao, we made another stop under a mango tree above a cave called Karanilulu. Here we quenched our throats and snacked on homemade pancakes before moving on. By 10 a.m., after climbing for almost 2 hours, we reached the entrance to the cave. It did not have dropping formations such as stalactites and stalagmites, but boasted a sturdy network of banyan roots that shielded the bone grotto from the scorching sun. One of the adult skull bones still had teeth. Others had holes in them. Bones that looked like those belonging to the limbs and curved ones of the rib cage had a slight green discoloration, perhaps the result of aging. A hole in the skull means the person was clubbed to death, Sarusi said. I heard there was a huge Lovo pit below this cave, so there must have been a huge feast at this place a long time ago. In an earlier interview with this paper, Laisa Vulacoro said one of her best childhood memories while growing up on Yakata was adventuring with her dad through the forest. This was during the late 1960s and early 70s. My dad took me everywhere with him because he thought I was strong, in fact, stronger than my brothers. I could climb trees and rugged rocks barefooted, Liza told the Fiji Times. We would look for ugavule and dig tivoli, and if we were still in the forest by lunchtime, Dad would like.
Hey, look, wild Ufi.
Oh,
Wild
so
Ufi
that's the
in.
Ufi Samoa. See, even the Fijians eat the wild yams that was grown in the Davao. See,
Hey,
it's
yeah.
not a Samoa thing. It's other Polynesians were doing the same thing, eating the Ufi Vao.
Hey, Maria,
We would look for
Maria.
ugavule and dig tivoli, and if we were still in the forest by lunchtime, Dad would light the fire, and he'd tavu a crab and some yams in the open fire while telling me Bible stories. Lisa's favorite jungle activity was playing with dead people's skeletal remains found in those caves.
Hmm.
Yakata had a lot of caves that had bones in them. My dad always told me to treat them with respect. Coconut crabs would scatter these bones, so my job was to put bones together neatly, all the thigh bones, arm bones, and skulls in separate piles. But when we returned, the bones would be strewn again by crabs. Yakata's association with Vuna in the past is evident in their sharing of ancestral god, totemic plant, fish, and bird. In fact, the island was part of the district of Vuna until the end of the war against the Tongans in the 1860s. To thank the people of Yakata for maintaining their allegiance to Tui Cacao during the Tongans' conquest in Fiji, they were brought under the ambit of the chiefly district of Cacodrove. Today, the Yavusa of Yakata is treated as the guardians to Cacodrove's chiefly household. Islanders are fondly referred to as Kase or Elder. After the defeat of Wainikolo at the Battle of Wairiki, Tui Cacao displaced all his people who defected and sold their islands as punishment. Yakata was spared. Tui Cacao also sold Vanuatu, but the sale was later reversed.
Interesting.
What's your thoughts,
Interesting.
Tor? What's your thoughts about it?
Yeah, I'm trying to get a better understanding on why did the viewer say exactly what well they wanted us to look into or just kind of talk about it?
I think just talk about it. What was our thoughts? The viewer just kind of shared. It did nothing specific, but I have my own ideas to it before I'll turn it to you. But
Yeah.
I mean, if that was the case, it was like the battle. If that's the case, I don't know if they were Ma'afu soldiers. It does seem like to fit that time period, as it mentioned in the article. But to my understanding, that Tui Cacao, he was feeling, like I said, he felt pressure to give up whatever political power he had, to give it to maintain his power, to give his allegiance to the British, and it was to the reason why the British was gonna take over Fiji, which they did because the Maafu's warriors were actually cleaning up a lot of these islands that you have over here, Tua, in the Lao
Hmm.
group, and they established him as the Tui Lao, and he was gonna make his way to the main islands. So that's my understanding there regarding that, because the oral history says that Tui Kakauga was feeling pressured from the British from the north, and then the Tongans coming from the Lao group, and he, in order for him to, and apparently he wasn't like the sole authority apparently from some of the Fijian saints to give up, but because he had the perception and viewed that way by the colonial powers, that's why he just kind of gave his rights and his kind of regional power to them, and that's what kind of he becoming like the governor or some kind of political authority in Fiji. But if that's a story that happened, it happened. But from my understanding from the oral history of with Maafu, he was very successful in dominating all the Lao group in the Eastern Islands, and
Hmm.
he was making his way to the main island um, of Fiji. But this Tui Cacao guy, from my understanding, he gave up his rule to the British to the British Empire. So that's just my thoughts there regarding this. If those were Tongans in the caves that were captured, we're not we're human beings. We don't always win every battle, but overall, Maafu was successful in pretty much his conquest of Fiji overall. So that's just me
Yes.
there.
Yeah, I'm trying to find. I remember seeing a map somewhere that it showed all the areas that Ma'afu had control over.
Okay.
Um, and I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to see if I can find it because it's it's important to understand. If I remember correctly, and you can see this map, right?
Yeah.
Like he had he had many of these islands to the east. He may have had portions of this, and then he had like certain spots on the bigger islands on small areas,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And I'm trying to find that map because it really goes to show that how do we put that into context of this story,
mm.
right? Because this story makes it sound like um, Ma'afu was not very successful
Yeah.
in his efforts, but the reality is, and I'm trying to find that map, and we'll ask Grok here some questions to see if he can help us find some of this information. But from all intents and purposes, in a very short amount of time, he was able to conquer several parts of Fiji and have under his control in a
Mm.
very short amount of time. Um, but let me see here.
No, and
Um,
the other interesting thing we did talk about it. I think it was you and I think Maka was part of this episode when we went through all the villages. I think he
defeat.
was in the Vitirevu, the bigger island of Fiji, and
Yes,
the amount of Tongan
Tongan
villages,
influence.
settlements. Hey,
Yes.
so I mean, like, and that's probably the reason why the Fiji, that chief, gave up its sovereignty to Britain, because I'm pretty sure a lot of the Ma'afu, when he was conquering, and then you have certain allegiance with the certain settlements in the Big Island. They were gonna there I would think that the Ma'afu would have some kind of influence to have their allegiance, and that would have been a very powerful force to deal with. So it was better to give up to the Paalangis, which that Fijian chief did, to become a colony to Fiji instead of being a colony of Maafu, because
Yeah.
Maafu was looking for somewhere to establish his authority, because Taufahau had pretty much Tonga, so he was looking for somewhere to establish his authority, and which he did because he became the Tu'ilau in Fiji. So, and with all the Tongan settlements that we did talk about, that's a lethal force that maybe you don't want to deal with it too much and save you the hassle and give it to the Europeans to give you some kind of power to live the rest of your days. I don't know. That's just me thinking out loud, Tua.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is, this story does make it seem like Ma'afu wasn't very successful and he lost things. And it sounds like this happened while Ma'afu was in Tonga. Uh,
Mm,
so that's another interesting thing here. But we're going to ask Grok here, military conquest in Fiji, give a timeline and islands and provinces under his control.
mm,
Let's see what Grok comes up with here. Can you see that? So I just
yeah,
asked, give a summary of the success of NLM Mafu in his military. So I want to read this with context of that story, right? So we'll kind of walk through this. It says NLM Mafu, a Tongan prince and Christian missionary, significantly influenced Eastern Fiji through strategic alliances, military campaigns, and political maneuvering from 1847 until British annexation in
mm,
1874. So about 30 years,
yeah,
right? Because he grew up on Tongatapu, and he was kind of exported out because Tupo the First was trying to ensure that there was no real threats to his power. That's a lot of the
yeah.
stories of why NLA was sent to Tonga to be the governor. His success stemmed from exploiting kinship ties, aligning with powerful Fijian chiefs, and leveraged Tongan military strength, particularly through his role as governor of Tongans in Fiji. Ma'afu established control over the Lau archipelago and parts of northern and eastern Fiji, creating the Tovata Confederacy. I never knew that.
Mm,
So that's what Ma'afu's basically, or the areas he controlled was called the Tovata Confederacy. I didn't know that.
mm, okay.
Though his ambitions were curtailed by British intervention and local resistance, such as on Yakata Island, his
That
conquest
okay.
reshaped Fijian politics. So that's where that Yakata Island.
Mm.
What's the population of that Yakata Island?
Ooh, let me see.
Look that up because I mean, I want. It sounds like it doesn't look like a very big island. I mean, yeah. And what's interesting here is it sounds like from the story that we heard and read there, the Yakata Island didn't fight them directly. It's They were retreating from a loss at Rairiki,
Mm,
and that's when they were killed. So were they actually fighting against Yakata? I don't know. And it doesn't sound like it's a big population.
no, I'm still
So
trying to get the
that's
population here.
interesting. Okay. Let's
Mm.
see. Yakata Island. His conquest reshaped Fijian politics, introduced Methodism, and left a lasting legacy, culminating in his title as Tu'ilau in 1869.
They said the population right now, from what I see here, is 240. So it's very small.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
small.
Interesting.
Mm,
So, I mean, maybe it's just a small little force of the battle, but it doesn't sound like that would be something that would stop Ma'afu's influence here.
yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
You want me to go
Interesting.
over the timeline
Yeah, go
of
over the
Ma'afu?
timeline right here.
All right. So timeline of Ma'afu's conquest and control. 1847, Ma'afu arrived in Fiji to investigate a preacher's killing in Vanua Balavu, sent by Tongan King George Dupo I to reduce his influence in Tonga. He settled in La Kepa, Lao province, leading the Tongan community and converting locals to Methodism. 1848, Ma'afu aligned with Tui Nawau, the prominent chief of Lao, and began consolidating power in the Lao archipelago, forcibly converting La Kepa's population to Christianity. 1850, Mafu gifted a canoe to Tui Cacao. So this is that guy, right? This
Yeah.
Cacao. Let me see. Cacao Kadavu drove province, receiving Manua Paravu in return. He established his base in Loma Loma, Vanua Palavu, after suppressing a religious war. This secured his control over Vanua Palavu and strengthened ties with Cacao drove.
Okay, pause
1850.
there real quick,
Yeah.
Masi. Let's look where. So there's Vanua Balabu right there,
Mm-hmm.
this area. So he's now establishing in how many years? Let me try and consolidate this stuff so we can
1847. Dang.
to 1850. So in three
3 years.
years,
She.
in 3 years, he's he has consolidated pretty much all of these islands, and then in the Lao group, and then now kind of the bigger island in the Lao group, he's consolidated power. And what I thought was interesting
Mm,
is he gifted a boat. So we're gonna say that he, according to chiefs here, this is a boat that the Hamoa people gifted to us, or what? Where did he get this boat from? Thank goodness the Lemaki clan, who probably the Tui Manua sent them and put them in the stones next to his uh, settlement where they buried them with the Ufi pits. Gave him this boat, but under interesting here, right? That
mm,
he's gifting both, and he's using military power, he's using alliances, and then economic influence just to get
yeah.
control over the islands. Very interesting. Okay.
All right. So
Um,
18. Want me to continue on to it or?
yes. Yeah.
Okay. 1850 to 1853, Maafu conquered the Moala Islands, Yasavu Moala, placing them under Tuin Neau's authority, expanding Lao's influence. He also gained control over the exploring isles, further solidifying his Laoan state. 1853, King George Dubois I appointed Maafu as governor of Tongans in Fiji, formalizing his authority over Tongan settlers and enhancing his military capacity. 1855, Maafu led 2,000 Tongan warriors in the Battle of Kapa, supporting Seru Ebenise Kakopau against Dewa and Pau rebels. The victory strengthened Kakopau's leadership and cemented Maafu's alliance with Pau, though it highlighted his reliance on Tongan military power. In 1855
Real
to
quick, real
1858.
quick,
Oh, yep.
Masi.
Hmm.
This is the Takombao that Tupou the First, on his way back from Australia, Takombao asks Tupou the First for support in the
Mm,
in the rebellion here, and Tupou the First says, "Yeah, I'll support you if you baptize to Christianity." And then Takombao is a Christian, becomes a Christian then. But here's one thing I want to point out, Masi, because when we did that episode, um,
yeah, a
look
while
look
back,
at
right?
the a while back. Look at let's show this first. Look at this is Takomba.
Oh, and he's the Tui. What was he? What was his title?
Tui
He was the.
Pao. He's the king of
Oh,
Pao.
okay, okay.
And look at him. He looks Polynesian. We found out later that's why he went to Po the First, is because of the Tongan influence,
Mm,
right?
mm.
And then if we let's try and go back here to the map. If I remember correctly, Bao is, I think, over here. Where's Bao
Is that where like
in
Suva
Fiji?
is that? Where's Bao? Or is that more the northern island?
Yeah, let me try and find it, because I want to say like it was like either this area or up here. I'm trying to figure out, because
Oh,
we
northern.
find
Oh,
out later that Bao had Tongan influence. The chiefs that were fighting against Takombao, this guy,
yeah.
they also had Tongan influence.
Mm.
Um, Let me see if I can find where Bao Fiji is.
Dude, it was almost like just bunch of Tongans just just starting for. for power, political
Yes.
power. Yeah.
Yes. And so Bao is somewhere here on this coast. Let's just find it. Bao, Fiji. So it's right there. So that's the
Mm,
Bao area. So it's on this eastern coast. Yeah, Suva, all this
mm.
area, and then the those other chiefs were like in this area, right?
And remember
Can you
that big
see?
river? That big river
Yes,
that
the
seems to have a bunch of
Sigatoka
tongue. Yes.
right here. And this,
Yeah.
so that was what was interesting is we were initially thinking, oh, this whole area right here had Tongan influence. And then we find out over here had Tongan influence, and then Pau had Tongan influence. That's why he reached out to Paul the First because of that relationship to Tonga. So really, there's Tongan influence all over Fiji, which was a
And you,
surprise to me when we did that video that we watched because
yes.
I thought it was mostly in Lao.
Yes. And he's the one that really made the call, right? To really give up Fiji's sovereignty to the
Yes,
British. Okay.
to the
That's
British. Yeah,
interesting. That's interesting.
yeah,
Well,
and
it's
it's
because
because yeah.
it gave him, well,
Go ahead.
he wanted some political power, right? Is that the reason?
Yeah, well, it's because apparently he burned down a U.S. embassy or asset, and then, um, like you read here, uh, Maafu first supported him to suppress the revolt against him, but then Maafu started to turn on Pau, and
Oh,
so he looked around. It's like, man, I owe money to the Americans. I can't pay them. I can't
yeah,
seem to get control locally. So his political move was, I'm going to cut a deal with the English and try
yeah.
and give me some type of political power.
Mm. Okay, so Maafu was doing his duty as a religious, but obviously Maafu had more ambitions to do more because he wanted, right? He was a well capable leader himself, as
Yeah,
proven.
yeah. Let's go with 1855 through 58, Mas.
Okay, using alliances with Tui Kakau, the Tui Pua, Maafu defeated the Tova Tui Makuata, extending his influence across northern Vanuatu. This made him the most powerful chief in northern Fiji by 1858.
So
That's
in
pretty.
what? So 1847, when did he first get
Yep.
there?
So in 11
So
years.
in less than, yeah, 11
He be,
years, he's the most powerful chief in northern Fiji.
yeah, in northern Vanuatu. That's amazing accomplishment.
And you're going to tell me Yakata Island with 200 population is what stopped him?
They had a good battle. That's what they're trying to say. But yeah, the war
Yeah,
looks like Maafu was gonna win the war no matter what.
exactly. Interesting.
So,
All
yeah,
right,
and then
let's go to 1858.
all right, 1858, British Consul William Bichard warned Maafu against further expansion due to Kakobao's offer to cede Fiji to Britain. Maafu signed an agreement denying sovereignty over Fijians, claiming he only oversaw Tongans, temporarily halting his conquest. See, this is the political move. This is what giving him justification to for I guess because there were so many Tongans everywhere. It seems like
Yeah,
everywhere in all of Fiji that was justifying his actions to say, I'm just gonna conquest as much as I can. But it looks like the British were worried about his
yeah.
conquest because of their
So,
deal with Kakenbao.
so let's come back to this. Let's see. Bua province alliances. Okay, no. So we need where extending is northern Vanuatu. Yeah, because that's what I remember we were talking. I wanted to see that map.
Mm,
This is
mm,
Vanuatu. So he had the northern piece of Vanuatu. So he has the Lao group.
yeah.
He has the northern part of here, right?
Mm,
And his justification was we already talked about the Tongan influence all throughout here, right?
mm,
with with the Sigatoka River expansion
yep.
there, Bao
Yep.
having Tongan influence, and then the Rewa chiefs
Yep.
over here. So basically, all of here had Tongan influence in it. And then we could make the argument that he has northern Vitilevu, and he
Mm-hmm.
says, I have a right to these places because of the Tongans that live there.
Live there. Yeah. So
Interesting.
so that's what I'm saying, Tua. That's what it makes sense with some of the oral history that I've heard that that Kakumbao gave the deal because it was very realistically if he was taking over that northern island, making his way down, and he could have picked up more allegiance from these other areas that had more recent Tongan migration to Ivanua level with that river. Dude, it's
Mm.
a reality he could have taken over all of Fiji, Tua.
No,
Like
that's what Takumbao I think was inevitably he saw was coming.
what's coming. So cut it like what you said, cut a deal because he was in
He
debt
can
with
get
the
some political
British
influence.
EO, and he
Yeah.
can save him and his family to have some kind of political influence in the new Fiji that was going to be under British colony. So hey, that's Bafu was a beast, man. He just seems like
Well,
he was a good.
now
It
you
seems like
know
well, I was thinking I was thinking that it seems like if Taufahau didn't achieve Tonga's independence, we had a strong number two.
we had a bench. We had a strong
We had
bench.
a bench. Eh? Shit.
Yeah. Well, now you know why Tupou the First needed to send him to Fiji. Because Tupou the First maybe saw him. This guy's pretty capable. He's
Yeah.
smart. He's a good leader. If I don't give him a task and move him out of Tonga, he could become a rival that could threaten
Mm.
his governance over Tonga. So Tupou the
Shit.
First seemed to have seen that too.
Mm.
All right, let's continue. 1862, Mas.
All right. 1862, after Britain declined to annex Fiji, Maafu resumed expansion, consolidating control over Lao and northern Fiji. 1867, Maafu established the Tovata Confederacy, uniting Lao, Kakao Drove, and Pua under his leadership. This confederacy covered most of northern and eastern Fiji, but was unstable and short lived due to internal rivalries. 1868, the Tongan government disclaimed sovereignty over Fijian territories, including Lao, weakening Ma'afu's position as a Tongan prince. 1869, Lauan chiefs appointed Ma'afu as Tu'i Lao, King of Lao, Levuka, and Ovalau, recognized by Kakao Drove and Bua chiefs, formalizing his authority in Lao. This title was later ratified under British rule.
Pause there real quick,
1870.
Marcy. I want to
Okay.
talk about a couple of things here. So, it looks like Fiji initially, or England initially denied the annexation of Fiji. So Dakomba is trying to build, he's trying to nation build, right?
Yes.
He's trying to build a nation for himself here. Excuse me.
Bless you.
And then he reaches out to the Tongan government.
Yeah.
And this, from what I understand, is England is starting to come back into the picture after they
Mm.
first said they know we're not going to annex Fiji, um, which kind of flies in the face of we always hear the story. Oh, nobody wanted Tonga. The English really wanted Fiji because of all these rich resources. Well,
Good,
it
great
sounds
point.
like Fiji. Looks like Fiji first said no, or
Mm.
England first said no. They didn't want Fiji. Um, but what I think is interesting here is so he reaches out to the Tongan government to try and
Mm.
say, hey, can we make the territories that I oversee as part of Tonga?
Part of Tonga. Mm.
And the Tongan government says no. And that really weakens his argument
As the Tongan prince.
of
Yeah.
yes, I'm not conquering here. I'm reclaiming. It's what Putin is claiming with Ukraine,
The
right?
same
He's
argument.
saying,
Yes.
yeah, I'm not invading a foreign country. I'm reuniting Russians who are
Mm.
in Ukraine who want to be part of Russia. So very interesting.
Maria, it's the same political play back in those days in the 1800s still happening in the 2025s. Eh? Politics is still the same.
Classic. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
18,
So
1869?
1871. No, I
No,
think we're
1871.
let's start with 1869.
Okay. Laoan chiefs appointed Maafu as Tuilao, king of Lao, Levuka, and Ovalau, recognized by Kakao Drove, and Pua chiefs, formalizing his authority in Lao. This title was later ratified under British rule. 1871, Maafu recognized Kakobau as Tuiviti in the Kingdom of Fiji, serving as viceroy but abdicating to maintain Laos autonomy. His administration in Laos provided favorable land leases to planters, making Loma Loma a trading hub rivaling Levuka. 1874, Maafu, alongside Kakubau and other chiefs, ceded Fiji to Britain. He became Roko Tuilao, a subordinate administrator in the Crown Colony, presiding over Lao until his death in 1881. His land reforms endured despite later uh, provincial corruption.
Corruption.
Mm.
So it looks like, I mean, the way I'm trying to read and understand this is after Tonga says, no, we're not going to recognize you as part of Tonga, then he joins under Takombao to say, hey, let's see if we can unify, right?
Yeah,
Let's see if we can unify Fiji,
be a kingdom kind
but
of thing.
to be a kingdom, but obviously that didn't succeed because eventually they're ceded by
Mm.
Fiji.
Fiji is ceded to the English. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's so he did all of that in 47 down to when does 47 to 74, so almost 30 years, just under 30 years.
Mm. Mm. Very
Okay.
interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the kind of stuff that I think is just an evidence of nation building, understanding how to build alliances, military power, understanding the role of religion, right? Because he had a religion component, a religious component, he had a military component, he obviously had a technological component because he had a superior navy. That was
Mm.
one of the reasons why he was able to move around so
Mm.
much, a lot of, and to do that in a short amount of time. That just goes to show, man, the Tongan model of expansion, empire building, organizing of government and resources. The Polynesian slash Tongan Empire, they knew how to do these things, man. And in a very short of time, he didn't even grow up in Fiji. And in
Yeah.
30 years, is one of the premier chiefs in Fiji.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting question too. If we ponder on it, like, what would happen? Maybe was it smart that Tupo the first didn't recognize and maybe assist Maafu in just even because all the Maafu looks like Maafu was willing to do the work. The work was the admin willing to do the whole managing of the Tongan. Let's just say they were all part the ones because it looks like Fiji was like one of those places that was like a lot of mixing with the Uri Uris too and the Polynesians. Looks like it was kind of like that place, but he just wanted some authority to help the see, and that's another level of political thinking. He just wanted some kind of authority from Tonga to justify what his actions to appease the Palangis in Britain. What he was doing was okay,
Yeah.
but
Yes.
maybe, see, and that's the thing, right? That's another level of politicking that Maafu was at. But maybe Taufahau knew something that if we recognize that, maybe the British would just come and take over Fiji, and then maybe come to Tonga militarily and do the same. So it's very interesting that
The
delicate
dynamics there. Yeah.
negocio. But I don't know. That's just very interesting on that level. But yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's, we have to kind of explore that. I would like to explore that question you asked, Masi, is what benefit would Tonga get from claiming the Lao group? I don't know of any benefit, but it would only add risk, right?
Mm,
It would add risk of England having more influence and possibly Tonga losing its independence. And also bringing the whole purpose of sending Maafu was to have him out of the Tongan
mm,
politics. And if you were to bring that in, that could possibly give Maafu a window back into Tongan politics and could challenge Tupou the first position. I don't know. I mean,
mm,
obviously, we don't know if what would have happened if he accepted the Lao group and northern Fiji into Tongan rule back into the Tongan nation. But what we do know is by not adding them, Tonga was able to remain independent regardless.
Mm,
So
yeah,
very,
yeah.
very,
I think
very
it was on that
interesting.
level. So, mm, yeah.
Yeah.
No, very interesting. But I think you brought a good point. The short amount of time that the influence Maafu was able to do, man, that's a big boy stuff, man.
And
Jeez.
this is the other thing that I think is interesting that this article shows. And because it's part of recorded history, there's no other group or small group of people in Polynesia that we have historical record of expansionism, right? Expanding outside. Remember, we looked at that one article that stated, hey, look, there is something that the Tongan group did that no other group did. And what was that? Controlling islands over a large amount of space. No other Polynesian island group had ever done that. And
Mm,
here we are, even in recorded history of Tonga practicing expansion in Fiji, right?
mm,
And we don't have any record of any other Polynesian islands doing that.
mm,
And you want me, I'm sorry, you want me to believe Tui Manua did that?
mm,
That we have number one, we have no evidence for that. Number two, there's no social structure that promotes that. And then number three, the archaeological evidence says you haven't been around long enough to do that. Then you look at the political structure. You don't have the political structure. That's why is America's system is not built for empires, right?
mm,
Because it's a little bit more distributed power. You have a president for 4 to 8 years
mm,
who wants to pursue one set of ideas. You get a new president who wants to pursue another set of ideas. The lack of consistency of the same idea, the same family, the same group making
mm,
decisions. That's why the Tui Manua and the Tui Uvea and so forth, they couldn't have been the center of the empire because they didn't consolidate power. It rotated through different family interests. There's only one location that we have historical evidence of expansionism. There's only one location where we consistently see consolidated power. There's only one location where we see heavy amount of ruins that indicate a center of a civilization is Tongatap. That's
mm,
that's we even have it on the outer islands too, but Mu'a being the center, the capital, I mean, this little exercise to me was very, very enlightening on Ma'afu, the knowledge, the skill sets, the military prowess, the administrative knowledge, right, the negotiations. But I can't help but point back. It says this is another reason why we believe there was a Polynesian nation and the capital was on Tongatapu.
mm. I was thinking, how about the Tui Pulotu Tua in Fiji? You forgot about the Tui Pulot. Nah, no, no. And just to add on, I mean, you know, that's a good evidence of why Tonga was able to go outside of the Tongan, let's just say the Tongan archipelago, and you were able to see expansion. And not only that, there's so many oral histories of. I think we came on with Vanuatu, which was kind of known as the
With
Otulatu.
the Kava. Yeah.
Yes, with Takava and just having their people having evidence of the Tuitonga arriving to their shores and having certain settlements there. I mean, there it's everywhere, like what you said, Tua, and um, it's just we're just trying to say that the Polynesian Empire, you would say, the Tuitonga Empire, Polynesian nation, it was centered on the the capital of Tongatapu, and the majority of its influence and ties was family mixing with the Tuitonga. That
Hmm.
was the first choice. But like this is an incident. There's other incidents with I think we kind of talked about it with what's his name? Fekai. Kaulufonua Fekai. It seems like he did something like a Ma'afu thing, had a little for 5 generations moving the settlement to Ha'amoa, while the Tui Hatarawa was running things in Tongatapu, but seems to have like a military campaign to kind of maintain some of or expanding the Polynesian empire with Kalufonua. But majority, I would say like 80% of the time, the ties to the Polynesian nation and holding it together under the Tuitonga was by its relations to the other islands to the Tuitonga. And then, occasionally there's little evidence here and there with some of the oral history that we've kind of shared and kind of gone through, kind of like a ma'afu kind of thing. Some Tongans who are maybe the outskirt or maybe some political tension with what was happening in Tongatapu had some little expansion, military expansion going
Hmm.
around. And maybe, and even in Kau'ufonua's Fekai's case, um, the multiple assassinations on the Tuitonga kind of moved him to do a little like a revenge tour, military revenge tour, a little bit. From some of the names after Kau'ufonua, after his own name, and I think there was the other Tuitonga from Tevita Fale's list of the Vaka Fuhu or something like Vaka Fuhu, like some of the names are like these are names that was a lot of military campaign going on. But that's just our spill on that. Tua.
No, that I was kind of when we first started looking at the article, I was like, I don't know what we're supposed to do. But the more we stuck around with it, we
Yeah,
found a good little vein to explore. So we appreciate the viewer who shared that article with us.
awesome.
Next topic, Masi. Animals versus humans. Kind of give some background while I pull up this next
All
one.
yes, all right, all right. So I mean, and this is a good discussion, especially in today's age. There's a lot of people giving animals more rights than like humans sometimes, and and I think this is a good discussion that there is a difference, and maybe we can, and I can share some of my ideas on what we can do better. And Princess Latufui Peka has her right, and we respect with all her respect. She can share her opinion. We can just share ours on this, but as Polynesians, I think it's important to discuss and differentiate sometimes the difference because I think it gets a little blurry too when we start treating animals like human beings a little bit because over the future it can cause confusion in the future. In my
Mhm.
opinion, I don't know. I don't know what your thoughts, Tua, with this whole topic that we're gonna discuss here before we kind of go into details.
My thoughts are this. If this is about bringing more resources and opportunity to the islands, and this is the little dance that you have to do, okay, right?
Okay.
I'm not. If this is what the little dance, it's like getting that your degree, right? You have to
Mm.
do the little dance. You have to write your papers. You have to do the reports. You do that kind of stuff. Does that mean like you're like, oh my gosh, this is the only way to survive? No, this is the European dance on positioning yourself for doors. I'm okay with that, I guess, right?
Okay. Okay. Okay.
It's a
So
it's it's a thin
okay.
line. It's a thin
Yeah.
line. It's a thin
Yeah.
line,
Yeah.
right?
No. It,
Now, oh, go
yeah.
ahead, Muzzy.
No, I'm just thinking of like the some of the oral histories with Tupo the First having our traditional dances changing their names. It's part of this
Yes,
dances with this politicking going on, and if it gives us more resources, I guess we just have to politic a little bit. Is that what you're trying to say?
yeah, yeah, kind of similar to that. You just understand the situation, and they
Mm.
said the Otuhaka is not good enough. So what did they say? Oh, this is a dance from Hamoa. They've been Christians and they've been governed as a colony. It's accepted over there. We're gonna call ours Tamaulu.
Wow.
It's been modified. It's now
Mm,
Christianized, but in
mm.
reality, it's the same thing, just repackaged, like Maui Tegelangi said, right?
Okay.
So
Okay.
for me, if that's the driver behind this, okay. However, if this is what you really, really believe, like if this is not to get resources and opportunity, that's the main driver, and this is really what you believe, now I have big concerns, right? Then I'm like,
Okay.
really? Do we really think this is the best way to think? So let me read a handful of these. The good news is it's not a very long
Okay.
article.
Hmm.
So it says in Nice, France, 4th of June, 2025, Her Royal Highness Princess Angelica Latuifuipeka Tukuaho, of Tonga delivered a poised and powerful address at the One Ocean Science Congress, today urging the international community to recognize whales as legal persons with the right of life, culture, and protection under law. Interesting, right? This whole
Mm,
legal person with right to life, culture, and protection. The time has come to recognize whales not merely as resources, but as sentient beings with inherent rights. Her Royal Highness said, their survival demands a transformative shift in our legal and ethical relationship with the ocean. Representing Welo Matamoana Trust and leading a Pacific delegation that includes the Moana Nui Sanctuary Trust and the Pacific Whale Fund, the princess called on governments to adopt legal frameworks grounded in science and indigenous knowledge. Maria, I don't know how you do that. Her message was clear. The Pacific is ready to lead with integrity, wisdom, and decisive action. This advocacy is central to the I'm a Person Too campaign. What? I'm a person too? Are they saying animals are people? They're
that's what.
persons? Okay,
Okay.
interesting. A growing global movement calling for formal recognition of whales' rights in national and international law. More than 367,000 people around the world have already signed the campaign's petition, reflecting widespread support for a new legal and ethical paradigm. Princess Latuifui stance continues a proud legacy. In 1978, her grandfather, the late King Tawhatupo IV, issued a royal decree banning all whale hunting in the Tongan waters, establishing one of the world's first whale sanctuaries. Okay,
Mm,
interesting. Today, Her Royal Highness builds on that legacy by advancing legal innovation rooted in cultural responsibility. Recognizing whales as legal persons would strengthen marine conservation and create new opportunities for sustainable development. For Tonga, this includes leadership in ethical whale tourism and access to emerging blue finance. See, if we're just talking about we just need some access to some finance, okay, we'll do the dance. It also affirms the Pacific's role in shaping global ocean governance through values of guardianship and intergenerational care. As attention turns to the United Nations Ocean Conference, Her Royal Highness's address stands as a timely and dignified reminder. The well being of whales is deeply linked to the health of the ocean and the future of our planet. This is not only a call for protection, it's a call for recognition and respect. Oh, yeah, it talks about
yeah.
367,000 people signed it. What are your thoughts,
Mm.
Mr. Ateroa?
Well, this is my thoughts. Like, I think you brought a good idea. It could be a politicking, just trying to get access to resources. Some of the ideas with the whole climate change and Tonga being able to get access if we kind of go with the game of saying yes, climate change and all of these things, right? Global warming, that we're a sinking island, all of that kind of stuff, whatever we need to say, right? But to me, I just see. I like what Dubois the first did. I like that decree, just saying just don't touch the whales, because that's been a popular practice with the tapu system. When
That's
when
what
a
I was
high
thinking. Yeah.
when a chief or a king just put a tapu, if on there's stories on puakas, the pigs, or certain birds that some of the chiefs would put a tapu on, and then people won't touch it. But to me, I'm not a fan of the for making it illegal, right, as a person, because one, that's not what we Polynesians have always done. We've always just put a tapu on it, and it's fine. And look, I didn't even read the article fully to see that part. And even Tubo the first just did a decree, because that's what us Polynesians just do. Just put a tapu.
Mhm.
But like what you said, Dua, it could be just join this conference and say certain things to get like a. It did mention the blue finance. Okay,
Give
we
us a
played
few
that
hundred
game.
thousand dollars. Yeah.
Yes, we can play that game because we've done it before. But and this is just all respect to Princess Angelica Latufuipeka, um, just making sure that we're we're not part of this idea saying where there's a confusion of humans like are like animals. There's a huge difference, and to me, I just and like what you said, it could be a politicking that we could do. Hey, we're doing that, but our ancestors have always put tapu, and there's been no confusion with the animals and humans. And a perfect example, Tua is the fonu, the turtles in Ha'apai, right? There's certain seasons that we can't touch. There's a certain tapu on it, and then there's a certain time in the season that the locals can go and catch the turtles, eat them, and not only that, use the shells and stuff to make bracelets and other um, decorations you want. And that's the same thing. And I think we can do that with the whales. You know, some people like to use the whales, and some people, there's better options. But to me, the tapu system seems to be something that's lasted time. That maybe we should continue to use it.
Yeah,
Don't get too pretty. I feel like if we get too pretty, but we can maybe get into some funny areas. But like what you said, Tua, and I didn't think about that. It's the next level of politicking is just play the game a little bit if you want to get a certain access to the potential huge blue finance, like mentioned in the
exactly.
article. But that's just me. I don't know if you had anything to.
Yeah, I mean, I work in construction, right? And if
Mm,
the owner has an idea that I don't have to agree with the idea, but if you have the checkbook, Mister Owner, I'll build whatever you want, right? If you want to build something weird and whatever, it's like, okay, what do you want to build? Okay, as long as you're willing to pay for it.
mm,
Um, that's the only thing I because you know what comes to mind when I think about this, Masi. It's the American idea of business entities being treated as a person.
mm,
Business entities have certain rights. They're treated as an individual, right?
okay.
So that's kind of interesting, right?
Mm,
Like a business can have, it has a quote unquote social security number, an EIN number.
wow.
It's
Wow.
treated to have
Okay.
certain rights. So is it a creative way of doing it? Yes. So I don't mind that concept of, I don't know if rights, I guess maybe rights is the right word. I just don't like the saying a person, right?
Mm,
Like somehow it has the same intrinsic value as a human being. There's a big difference. So interesting idea, Yeah, you want me to, do the little dance, write me a checkbook. It helps my people in Ha'apai and Vavao and Tongatapu,
mm,
the
mm.
whale watching tourism.
Tourism.
Okay. But also remember that these are the same groups that also criticize Tonga for still doing the whale watching and diving
Mm,
with the whales.
and getting up
So,
close. Yeah.
and getting up close. So, hey, I'd like to thank the princess for doing that. That's her role.
Mm,
She's just doing her job. Um, but at the same time, we don't, I think the concern is the same. Let's not confuse humans with whales. That doesn't mean we don't care about the whales. I think I
mm,
like your idea, Masi. There's already a system that Polynesians use that's very effective. We
mm.
can use that, but if this is about the dance to get a check, I'm all for it, man. Let's get the investment. We're
Okay.
not doing anything unethical, but that doesn't mean we have to, like the tithing. Hey, we believe in the same God. Why do we have to send the tithing again to Australia or wherever?
Mm,
Just leave it here in Tonga. We
mm.
have to use these ideas and these structures to our own benefit, and I'm hoping that that's what the princess is doing.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Good discussion on that one. Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna skip to this one. This one is an interesting one. I was gonna do the family one, but this is
Ooh.
an interesting little situation here, and you know, I don't want to hear it from the Tui Manua, blah blah blah. People said, "Oh, there's no evidence for that," right?
Mm,
Um, let's let's just say this: the only evidence we have for the Tui Manua is pretty much oral history. So don't get angry at the people. Don't get angry at the people of Tokelau for having
their
their
own
own.
oral history.
Yeah. So let's just read and explore what
Okay.
Tokelau brothers and sisters.
And this is the
Can
first
you?
time I've
Oh,
ever heard this, Tua. This is the first time I've ever heard this,
um,
that Tunay Fata from Tokelao.
yeah. I mean, I never heard of it. Um, Let me see if I can zoom in, because maybe I would like you to read it, Mister Atera, but I don't know if I can zoom in.
I can read it. I can see it from here.
Oh, there we go. Oh, there. Hey, what's going on here? The Zoom is not working. Oh, maybe actually, our that's the video that Kawa University reached out to me. He was looking for.
Okay.
Where is this? Fihalaki tamai for Zoom. I zoom in and I messed everything up right here. All
Okay.
right, you can read it. You can read it,
Yep.
Masi.
I can read it from here.
Okay,
So Tokelau history, story of Tuna and Fata, real names, Kava and Hingano. So that's the names in Tokelau Tua, are they saying? The Kava
that's
and Hingano?
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
Okay. All right. In the time of old Tokelau, on the island of Fagaofo, there lived a high chief with two sons named Kava and Hingano. These brothers are remembered in oral history by their nicknames, Tuna and Fata. I can see that because in Polynesians they have like couple names like how they always say
hmm
that Inua Pratene Tene sometimes
yeah.
with the other names they go by. Okay. The leaders of Togelau knew that Kava and Hingano had a sister who was living in Samoa. She married a high chief there. However, during this time, Samoa was under foreign rule occupied by Tongans. Concerned with their sister's safety, the chief of Tokelau sent his sons to Samoa to bring her back home. When Kava and Hingano arrived in Samoa, they followed the river inland, walking along an upstream track. Along the way, they met a woman who was cleaning fish on a wooden table. Curious, the woman asked who they were. Thinking quickly, the brothers used nicknames inspired by what they saw. Kava said his name was Tuna, after the fish she was cleaning, and Hingano said Fata, after the table she was using. In time, the brothers led the rebellion against the Tongan occupiers. They gathered a battalion and helped the Samoans drive out the Tongans. With victory, they restored the village and chiefly house where their sister had lived. However, their sister chose to remain in Samoa with her husband. Having completed their mission, Tuna and Fata, Gava and Hingano returned to Tokelau as heroes. It is important to note that another figure, Savea, is often mentioned in connection with this story. However, Savea was a Samoan who followed them. Very interesting. What's your
Hmm.
thoughts, Tua?
Yeah, so there's a couple things that stick out to me, and number one, it wasn't a foreign invasion from our perspective.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah.
was maybe an oppressive leader at best, um, because there was no independent state of Samoa and separate state of Tonga. It was all the Polynesian nation. So that's one of my
Mm,
critiques of this story. Um, the other one of my critique of the story is they make it sound like it was some kind of revolution, like they led. It was not a war, quote unquote. It was a single battle, in my
correct.
opinion.
Mm,
Right? So hey, maybe Tuna and Fata were from Tokelau, but at the same time, Tokelau wasn't a independent nation. It was just another island within the Poly Nation. We'll just call it the
yeah,
Poly Nation,
yeah.
right? It was another island in the Poly Nation, and we were all one people. So, is it possible? Yes.
Mm,
I don't necessarily agree with some of the descriptions, but it's oral history. No oral history is going to catch every detail accurately. Many times oral history is about the overall theme and the overall context and maybe the major parts of the story, or have some relevance to actual history. But I mean, this is one of the challenges of just having
or
oral history without any type of ruins or backing to it. It has limitations. So I'm open to the idea. If I had to choose, do I think it's true or false? I'd probably lean to, seems like it would be really obvious to Samoa that they were from Tokelau, but I don't know. I don't know the
okay.
politics, right? You don't. If you're the Savea, who's the Marietoa family, and you're running the politics, you don't want to say that the heroes were actually foreigners. You want the heroes to be local and part of your family. to justify the Marietoa title and what was done. So
Mm.
I don't know. It could go either way, but I'm leaning towards Tuna and Fata were probably Samoan, but it's a possibility they're from Tokelau. What are your thoughts?
No, I probably go with you. The only reason why I say it, do it, because when we pass down oral history, there's a reason why Tuna and Fata were not given the title, because the story goes it was the a relative to Tuna and Fata that got the title. So it makes sense why they didn't get the title, because the story goes they clubbed each other fighting for the title when the Tuitonga was away, and when they clubbed themselves, to me that's a that's like a message sending to me, like saying maybe they are from Tokelau. They just went back to their home in Tokelau, and then the relative who
Mm,
was more in Haamoa stayed and took up the name Marietoa, the Marietoa title. So I feel like there is a little bit some truth with the most prominent, mind you, the oral history that I've been hearing is Tuna and Fata clubbed themselves to death and then left the Savea guy, which took the
Scavea,
name.
last ending.
Yes, the last stand you take upon the name. So there is probably truth into that, and maybe there is
Okay.
some kind of connection
So
to Tokelau. Maybe when they clubbed
mm,
themselves to death, that's when they've left
just
Ha'amoa
left.
doing their mission or whatever to a close relative, and then going back. And then that Savea that really
Mm,
was kind of like part of their
a
entourage,
local boy.
Io took up the name and became the Marietoa till coming now. So that's where I find that very interesting. The Tokelao share that because when I hear that oral story, that kind of fits in with the whole thing that happened with them not taking it, because maybe they weren't there to take up a title. They were there to do a fatonia, a responsibility to a close relative, and then they left, and then that Savea took up the name. So that's just me too regarding that. So
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, because like we said, it's the biggest parts of the oral history story that could be referencing something, and I can see that if they
Mm,
club themselves to death, that just to represents them leaving and no longer staying in
yes.
Ha'amoa, and that's why the Save. Because it never did make sense to me if Tuna and Fata were the heroes, someone else inherits the title. Like that
That's yeah.
doesn't
That
make
was
a lot of sense.
yes. Yeah, me too. That doesn't make sense, and that's why I do see it with that story that they from Tokelau Island, that they didn't really care to be in Ha'amoa. They just came to do something,
Mm,
and the clubbing themselves. To me, I'm interpreting, and it could be wrong because there could be other oral history, but the most dominant one I've been hearing, they clubbed themselves to death. That's a sign that they had no intention to come back to Ha'amoa, and then
mm.
Savea took it out. So I feel like that's the big truth when I was reading that. That I'm interpreting that man, there could be some truth to this. And mind you, this is
Interesting.
my first time seeing this. So
Okay. Before I was a 80-20. 80 the
mm,
story is probably not accurate, but after this conversation, maybe I'm a 60-40.
mm,
That 40% that it's accurate, that it's true, 60% that it's not true, but I'm a lot more open to it. Um, and that would also explain why it was just one battle, right?
yeah,
Because they weren't going to stay long term.
mm,
They were just there maybe to help their sister or whatever. And part of helping their sister was this rebellion. I don't know. Who knows? Very interesting. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm
very
open to that.
interesting.
I'm open to that idea.
Yeah, and hopefully, our viewers who see this can add in their thoughts and later comment on it, and then we can keep discussing. Because I feel like the more we discuss about it, the better idea will come out of it, and it will be the closer to the truth. Because no one will never know, but we can. The more you talk about it, the more refined that
The
person's idea
closer
will
we
be.
can get, possibly.
Yes,
I'm gonna do an audible, Masi. I'm gonna do an
let's go.
audible, and I'm gonna say Junior Fa and LDS. You know the former boxer,
Yeah, I've met him.
and
I've met him before.
yeah, what kind of dude is he? Does he seem like a cool guy?
Seems like a cool guy. He was just very cordial meeting. He was filling up gas at our local gas station up here on the road, and I saw him and I shook his hand, just told him I'm a fan. of his. This was like a couple years ago. This is before he stopped boxing. This is when he was boxing. So it's
Mm.
been a while. It's the last time I saw him.
And I'm gonna send this because I did save this video and Kava University. Let me do this. Let me send it to Kava University first before I forget because he asked for this.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I told him, hey, yeah, I have it. I saved it. Um, I saved it so that one day we'll close with this one, Basi, because it is kind of interesting. I know some of our viewers are like, why we talk about LDS stuff? Well, sorry guys, this is the Kava Circle. We talk about everything, and if you
Mm,
guys want to challenge the ideas, more than welcome. You
okay.
know, but this I didn't know he was LDS until I saw this video,
Okay.
or he used to be LDS.
Okay.
So this video is talking about why he got disenfranchised with the LDS Church, and we'll close out the show with this. This is funny.
Okay.
Left. Our first prophet, Joseph Smith, he translated the Book of Mormon. That's a massive cornerstone in our religion is Joseph Smith. People will say it's Jesus Christ, but really it's Joseph Smith. I got told that he just had like gold plates, ancient records of the people in America, and there were gold plates, and he read it like that. And then eventually I found out, well, yeah, he would sometimes do that, but the thing is that no one kind of saw him do that. It was always covered and stuff. And then sometimes he would do that, but then sometimes he would put a rock in a hat and look into that. And then that was how he translated the Book of Mormon.
Oh.
Now, that to me sounded really, really silly. The first time I saw that was on a South Park episode. And I know South Park always takes the piss out of everyone. But the thing is that South Park was telling the truth.
Hey, Joseph, I told my wife that you spoke with God and Jesus, and she didn't believe it.
Well, it's true. I did.
Where?
I was out in the woods, praying. I was asking God if I should be a Protestant or a Catholic or what. And suddenly, God and Jesus appeared before me. And they said I should start my own church because none of the others had it right. And that's exactly how it happened.
You see? You believe it now?
Well, yeah, sure. Why would he make that up?
Dum 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 dum. Many people believe Joseph. Dum 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 dum.
Why didn't you guys tell me? So we had a seer stone, and the seer stone kind of glows, and it gives you a direct translation of what the book is saying. So he puts it in the hat, so puts his face in the hat so that he can see the rock illuminate with what he has to say. And then I went back into the church's doctrine, and they said, "Oh yeah, this is right." And I'm thinking, well, then why do so many people not know about this? Before that, he was using the stone in the hat to trying to tell people where the treasure was buried. Treasure digging back then was a very common thing.
Yep.
But the thing was that no one ever found any treasure. But he used the same method to translate the Book of Mormon. This is exactly the reason why.
Interesting.
So maybe you can share with everybody, maybe go into detail with the whole seer stone and the whole process of the translation. What was your understanding of how he did that, so people can have a better idea about it?
Yeah, the reality is there's a lot of uncertainty on how exactly he did it. Some people say he used the Urim and Thummim, which is like a chest plate, and it had came up with two stones because those were buried with the plates. Some people have said, yeah, he used the seer stone sometimes in a hat, and then there are other records that say there was a point where he didn't even look at the seer stone or the plates, and that he was able to receive that inspiration directly. What I think is funny is there is record in the Bible that Joseph from Egypt would put water in a cup, and he would look into the water and he would be able to see things. Right? And it's supposedly the same cup that he put into Benjamin's bag of goods that hid, and then he accused them of stealing, and he kept Benjamin while he sent his brothers. So yeah, so to me, there's an individual's lack of getting into the details to find how it actually worked, and saying, "Oh, it must not be true because I just know of what everybody else thought." And because somehow the stories I heard from everyone else turned out not to be true. Is that really a reflection of the truthfulness of of the Book of Mormon, or is it more a reflection of go and find out for yourself and the
Mm,
lack of doing that? So it's very difficult for me to kind of be like, man, come on, Junior. It's like, you mean you didn't go to find out for yourself, and then you believe something just because of people's stories and so
yeah,
forth, and then
somebody else's
somehow,
leftovers. Yeah.
yes, and then all of a sudden, see, that's the thing, is then he says, oh, I just heard other people tell me other stuff. At what point are you just going to say, you know what, is this book true or not? At the end of the day, no one can go back in time. I was having a discussion with a guy before I left. Actually, just before I left Texas, I met with the missionaries, and we had a conversation with a kind of like a born again Christian guy,
Hmm.
and he says, "Yeah, I don't trust that human beings can pray and ask God if something's true." And then I said, "Oh, that's interesting. So you're saying that we can't pray to find out that the Book of Mormon's true. So how do you know that the Bible is true?
Mm,
You weren't sitting there when whoever wrote down the Bible and the copies of the Bible. So how do you know that the Bible's true?" And they said, "Well, because there's evidence that proves the Bible is true." And I said, "Well, first off, for every evidence that you bring up, I can find an atheist who will discredit that evidence, right?" And then I said, "So basically, you don't have faith that the Bible is true. You only believe in the Bible because there's evidence. So you don't have faith in the Bible because faith is believing in something that's true that you cannot see, right? But is true." So I don't know if that answers your question, but to me,
mm,
there's various conflicting things. To me, a more efficient way is read the Book of Mormon, pray, and ask God. And if God tells you it's not true, then I suggest you don't follow it. But if
mm.
you pray and God tells you it's true, I suggest you follow it. That's my personal opinion. It's the same thing that we pursue here on history, on certain
Mm.
things that happen. We throw in our ideas, we have them compete, and then we have the choice to say, which idea am I going to put faith in? Because no one knows for sure on anything.
Yeah. Yeah. No, good points. I think with that, like what you mentioned too, with the whole seer stones and how he was different methodologies he used to try to translate the golden plates or the records of the ancient people in the Americas. It was like I think it was like a various of different days. Maybe like some days he didn't need it, like what you said, he was inspired and recorded, and so I don't know why that's a big deal. But Junior File was saying to me was a big deal of translating. To me, when you read the Book of Mormon, like what you mentioned to, you read the Book of Mormon, it is very specific on how it was done, and it was just done once. That's the crazy thing. If you compare the records of the Bible to the Book of Mormon, and you talk about less hands holding scripts on stuff, you can't beat the Book of Mormon with its translation. So,
Yeah,
so yeah, so that's what I'm trying to say when you compare the both because it was just translated once, and there's just no way that because I view the book of the Bible and also the Book of Mormon as just they're just records of ancient people with their journey of with God and also their trials within their own society. The Bible is a lot of the records in the Israel, Middle East regions, and the Book of Mormon is just all of the stories of people from Israel migrating to the Americas and explaining of their struggles and encounterments of God and their people. So that's how I see them as record context. And to me, with the whole part of Joseph Smith translating it, he did it once, and there's just no way with a person he wasn't he didn't go to school, he wasn't a high intelligent person, but you know he did it with inspiration only from God. So to me, that's what strengthened my testimony and what my
Yeah,
belief that the Book of Mormon is true. Because I don't know if you focus, like, to me, you can focus on how he did it, but at the end product, like, you just, like what you said, hey, at the end of the day, pray if it's true or not. But when I think of it, my own personal understanding, the the way it was written, there's no way he could have written it just on his own knowledge. So
yeah,
that's just my idea there, and just invite Junior Fa to, if it's not the right faith to believe it, then you have that freedom of choice to do what you want. But at least you can say you did it on your own without kind of, it's almost like the people who act when they're with other friends, they act a certain way, and then when you're in a certain other groups of friends, you act a certain way. That's how I see it. You have those people who are easily influenced. It's like, you tell somebody who gets out of jail, don't hang around with your old friends, because you hang around with your old friends, you will always end up going to jail. And it's always that certain type of behavior, easily influenced. Don't be like that when you get something, especially with your spiritual um, identity, and knowing if something is true or not. It's something to take it personally and know it on your own terms, not on other people's
yeah,
terms.
yeah. No, I agree. And really, I just personally, I want to challenge his process of getting to his conclusion. Eh? Let's say we
Mm,
forget about the conclusion he came to, and we just say, you sat down and watched South Park, and that's the reason why. Okay, I said, they gave you some ideas. You went and read, and you thought these things, but the reality is, you're still relying on faith regardless. Before you were relying on your faith was on what people told you initially. Then
mm,
you went and found out new facts, and you totally switch because you're having faith in what these other people say. You know, this is why we're a believer. Go to the source, man.
yeah.
You can't tell me you're. This is another interesting thing, Masi. Do you think it's possible to not have faith in this life? Because some people believe, oh, I believe in science. I don't need faith. I don't operate by faith because science and evidence is how I operate. Do you think do you think that's possible, that's really true?
Well, yeah. Well, I don't think it's possible, because you got to have faith in that process, or that scientist that's applying the science to make sure it's correct, right? So
Yeah.
you're gonna have to apply faith. It's just depending on some people who just want to see actual people doing it, instead of things just happening without human intervention. And some people are like that, you know.
Mm.
That's just me. I
Yeah,
don't know
'cause-
what you thought.
no,
What you think?
I agree. It- the reason why you cannot escape faith because no one knows everything. And a big part of the scientific method is what? Observation.
Mm,
So let's take the position with Joseph Smith and translating. Unless you were there in person watching, and even if you were there in person, you couldn't tell if he was making stuff up or not because you don't know. You can't get inside Joseph's brain and his
mm,
intent. Like, you cannot escape operating by faith. Because, like you said, oh, a scientist came out with this test. Well, how do you know that scientist is not bought off by a billionaire or by some foreign government? We we live in a time that we know that just because you're a quote unquote expert, that doesn't mean you're not influenced by something,
mm,
right?
mm,
And and just because you're an expert doesn't mean you don't make mistakes or you not influenced by foreign actors. So I'm of the mind everyone operates by faith. You can't get around it. And then for those who say, "Oh, I'm not religious. I don't believe in God." No, you do believe in God and you are religious. You can't avoid it. All God is whatever you think is your number one thing. If you believe in philosophy,
that's your
that's
God.
your highest thing. That's your God. If you believe the most important thing is money, well, that's your God. So it to me it's kind of interesting because it almost makes me feel like he's not just saying the LDS church is not true. He may be saying he doesn't believe in God, possibly at the rate he's going.
Mm,
Um, But I think it's very interesting. I thought it's a valid thing to discuss because
Yeah.
we have to understand or come to an understanding of how do we determine how we behave as human beings and what we should believe in. And for me personally, I don't if you believe in any religion, I just pray that you ask Heavenly Father. I don't let's remove the religion out. Just do
Mm,
whatever Heavenly Father tells you to do, right? Whatever that is. If you can come to me and say, "Hey, Tua, I honestly prayed and I feel like Heavenly Father go told me to go this direction," I'm gonna say, if that's what you really feel, go in that direction. Who am I to get in the way of what Heavenly Father is telling you? It's like, but that's
mm,
with the caveat that you're being sincere to yourself. That's the hard part, is I hope you're sincere to yourself, and
mm,
I hope that Junior Fa here is being honest to yourself. Hey,
mm,
Junior, are you really saying that that's the reason why? Or is this a convenient way to say, well, I didn't like the church anyway. I didn't like
mm.
religion anyway. So, I found these couple instances that didn't agree. Oh, that's my easy button to say, yep, that's why I don't believe in religion or the church. Hopefully
Or
that's not the case.
or somebody in my congregation or other Christian church has done me wrong, or something. It could be
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Yeah.
But if that's his honest opinion and he really feels that that's what he should be doing, you have my support 100%, with the hope that you're being honest to yourself. Because as human beings, we're really good at lying to ourselves. Mr.
Uh,
Atearoa, we're coming up we passed the 2 hour mark. We're going to make
yep.
this live two separate episodes, but closing thoughts or anything you want to mention.
No, I think we had a good variety of topics, Tua, that I was happy that we were able to discuss. Always happy to see the viewers always chime in and sharing their thoughts and comments. Always appreciate them. Um, closing thoughts, Tua. I think that's important. Make sure you're honest with yourself in seeking that the truth, whether that's be your spiritual identity, your cultural identity, whatever truth that you seek. Sincerely ask yourself if you've done everything you can, and in a sincere heart, seek the truth. And a lot of that takes a lot of work. I think people always miss that. When you seek truth,
Underestimate.
you think that it's gonna come to you, or you just sit around and just maybe see if it's gonna show up to you or whatever. Be aware, work on the things that you need to be working on to try to seek that truth. If that means to stop certain habits, stop those bad habits. If it means to change your lifestyle and taking care of your mental health or your physical health, then do that to change that. So it takes a lot of work to try to seek the truth, because you have to put in the work, whether that's be your physical state or your spiritual or mental state. So that's what I'll close with, everybody. Tua, I don't know if you had any closing thoughts to our show.
Yes, there's a couple closing thoughts. Your words remind me of, I remember, I believe it's Grandma Piwela would always say, "E mama ni go ni pau ke ngawe i me ako toa." In this life, everything requires work,
Mm,
right? Whether it's education, whether it's family obligation, whether it's your relationship with your kids or your spouse, or your friends, all these things take work. Um, and just like the Ufi, right? The less work you give the Ufi, the less tender, the less the size of the Ufi, the less the return. But if you give effort and you take care of the details as much as you can, like the Ufi, you'll get a beautiful, delicious, very valuable Ufi that can serve your family, that can serve you, and that can serve everyone around you. So don't don't be afraid of work. And I'm not saying I'm like the best worker. I consider
mm,
myself someone who's relatively lazy, and I have to try and push myself to be willing to work, or at least have the desire to work.
Mm, mm.
The other thing I think that's important, as well, Masi, because we got some really sad news today in our family. One of our
Yeah.
cousins is no longer with us. That enjoy life, take the opportunities to spend time with family and friends as much as possible. This cousin of mine, I only met him twice, Sir Nikatoa, and yet it's a very sad thing to see him go, but it's also very comforting to know this is not the last time that I saw him was in Utah. Because just like our ancestors who believed in an afterlife with the old religion before Christianity came, and also an increased faith in afterlife in the new religion, I look forward to connecting with him in the future. But it
Mm.
also is a friendly reminder: use your time here to work, to build relationships with family and friends, and take advantage of that opportunity. Um, Before I close with our always two invitations to everyone, Masi, kind of
Yo.
give everybody a heads up on the interview, the guests that we're having the
Mm.
recording with. Um, that's kind of an exciting opportunity there, and then we'll give our closing invitation as we always do.
Okay. Awesome. So we're having an interview. I think tomorrow too, huh? My time.
Correct.
With two ladies, prominent ladies. Lute Faleolo, I believe, is her name. She's the one that went viral with her suggestion that Tonga was not colonized, that we chose Christianity with that
Hmm.
popular topic. So we have her, and also along with her is her younger sister, Charmaine Talay, I believe. She's also doctorate in she holds a doctorate degree, and
Architecture.
arch, she has a master's in architecture. I'm not too sure what doctorate degree she holds, but she's a senior lecturer at the University of Auckland that will join us. She's probably been to my understanding, she was the lead project in the renovation of the Tonga's airport thing, but she's into architecture and infusing Polynesian kind of flavor in the building
Mm,
of modern buildings with some Polynesian flavor into it. That's kind of my understanding briefly, Dua. So we'll have those two ladies join us, and we will do the discussion with them in the segment on the Polynesian Eyes podcast, and then whenever it's ready to release, we'll release it to the viewers. But we appreciate everyone's patience and also following this channel, the Polynesian Eyes podcast. So hopefully it will be something that everyone will enjoy.
enjoy. Yes, 100%. Also, interesting milestone. We dropped episode 100 on the podcast
Yes, sir.
this
Yes,
week,
sir.
so that's a cool little milestone for us in our humble little effort in our little corner and Kava Bowl, digital Kava Bowl. So that was exciting. So once again, as always, Mr. Ataroa, malo for your time,
Thank you,
and
Dua.
to our
Mahalo for your time.
viewers, stay curious and don't be afraid to ask the hard questions. Till
Yes,
next
sir.
time, peace.
Peace.